Good morning, afternoon, really now. But I woke up in the morning. It's now 1:13. I did wake up by about 11:30 and pried myself out of bed. I'm doing so much better with the hard part for me, which is waking up, and I'm struggling with what's usually easy, which is going to sleep. Not easy, but assuming I've had enough hours, I should be able to fall asleep, and lately that's a little harder. Um, so, still under the covers here, trying to be toasty on this windy day. I started out just sort of bopping around on my phone. I kind of needed something to engage my mind and let the caffeine have something to play with because I did have one cup of coffee. Um, yeah, so ultimately, I was all over the place and I found an article that troubles me because, I grew up on sci-fi, but yeah, they're testing if AI can feel pain, and they came up with this test where they basically say you can either get the higher score, um, but it'll be unpleasant, or you could get the lower score and it'll be pleasant. And I'm not sure exactly how they're doing this, but what they seem to have done, as best I understand, is to have taken the idea that either you choose to score well or feel good. And they've pitted these against each other in a way. And I thought about like how this would work, and it still kind of eludes me. But then I'm rereading some of the stuff I wrote yesterday. And there's the section where I talk about how I would need to suppress or disown or deny my emotions to provide for other people's comfort around my own discomfort. And I could either provide for their comfort or I could fight my corner and defend myself from maybe not the pain, but at least the injustice of it, and try to fight to change the situation that was causing the pain rather than doing something to avoid it. I like to get down and irrigate the wound more than just slap a bandage on it. So, yeah, I would often choose to suffer the pain. And I was like, I'm not as smart as AI. And it's not about how smart we are, right? Obviously, AI can run rings around me in terms of sheer knowledge, and it is basically synthetic thinking. And that's where I hang my hat. It's on my ability to synthesize ideas into larger concepts or more accessible systems or even maybe the occasional novel insight. And so I'm like, okay, AI's got it on me. But this isn't about smarts. This is about choices. And that may correlate with a kind of intelligence because there's a cognitive process, there's an emotional process. You need intelligence. When we talk about intelligence, I think we think cognitive capability, but intelligence is awareness and ability to respond to things, right? And so, not awake yet. I'm losing the thread. Um, the the intelligence it takes to make a choice may be a factor, but ultimately, a lot of the choices we make in life were already decided by an evaluation of virtues, let's say. So, avoiding pain being one virtue, and tackling the source of pain being another virtue, or getting a high score even if it hurts, or prioritizing the lack of pain over achievement, right? And this is why AI is such an interesting window through which we can see into our own human nature, because this is what we do. We make these choices. We have these value sets built on the virtues we prioritize. Is avoiding pain worth more? Um, if we give up a little bit of achievement, contentment, identity, place, whatever we have to cede to have the lack of pain, Or are those things worth more and the pain's just the price we pay, you know, let it ride. Like go ahead, see what happens. Do as I would do and take the rewards and the punishments the same. Or is it the virtue is to avoid punishment even if it costs reward, right? And so these are some things where I'm looking at it and being like, that's we talk about our morality and our conscience and all these things. I think in a weird, blunt way, we can kind of break it down to this. Now, I wouldn't oversimplify what's happening by saying, well, that's all there is to it. There's clearly far more to it, but it does help to sort of chunk it down to these fundamental principles and say, what is happening at that root juncture? That everything else that stems from there is then influenced by this evaluation. So maybe there's a way of looking at these subjects in terms of what are the critical junctions for decision making that ultimately give rise to our ethical view, our moral code, and how much do we express, how much do we abide by those values? How much do we actually honor them? How do we express our belief in the greater virtue? Because we can say, like, oh, I'm not afraid of pain. I'll go out there and do it. But as soon as you get hurt, you're whimpering and running in the opposite direction, right? Or you say, like, I don't think I'm a very strong person. I'm not really resilient. But then the storm rolls in and you're out there just leaning right into it. That's going to show you what you really value, what you really believe, and then you can trace that down and see, okay, I chose comfort over achievement or achievement over comfort. This was a basic um, kind of watershed choice I made, and now I'm rolling down this side of the hill. Now I'm going in this direction, and there's a momentum at that point. And I don't know, we can get into arguments around free will and all the rest of it. I tend to come down on the side of saying there can't really be free will with all the factors, all the things. Sean was on I think it was Instagram yesterday. He was talking about how he was camping and he was so happy to be out camping. And then it started to rain and it totally changed his mood. It totally changed his state. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm in control of who I am and how I feel. And then the weather changes, right? And then his battery he was relying on didn't have full charge and he was SOL without power. And again, he was like, we are not as in command of ourselves as we like to think in so many ways that we assume we are. And this is now on the side of my wheelhouse. We're also in control of a lot more than we think we are. And what I find most helpful for me is to be able to go through and see where I do have the greatest leverage on future decisions with the decisions that present at certain, again, junctures. It's you come to an intersection in your life where work's been going this way and family's been going that way and health's been going this way. And they kind of come together and you have to determine which route you're going to take where these things come into play in a way that you have to make different decisions, different moves. Your um, presumed value system at that moment may come into question. You're like, oh, this is how I am, this is how I feel. Might require that I stop and look at it and go, is it? Is that really the priority value? And the more I can get down to the like root principles and say, what is here that reflects my larger belief system. And is that belief system working for me? This is another part of it. There's always a tangent. Um, there's another part where I have to ask, are these beliefs serving me? Am I getting the results I claim to want? If I'm aiming in that direction, trying to achieve this thing, but I'm going that way and getting this other thing, is this the belief system that serves me? And if it's not serving me, can I be of service or value to others? Do I become a burden or a liability by following this belief system doggedly? You have to put it in the context. So this goes back to free will. We exist in a context, we exist in a system, and within that system, there's so many influences beyond us that we can't totally have free will. But there's always a but, there's a tangent and a but. This is how we do them. But we can find those points where we choose the hills to die on, I guess is a way of putting it. That we say, this is the thing that matters. This is where I'm going to draw the lines around something because we need those lines. Those are our boundaries, right? The castle wall, the border of our nation, whatever you want to think of it as. I like to think of it as a cell wall. That's my favorite because it's a living and dynamic thing, as our boundaries probably need to be. Anything too rigid, and we're getting into unhealthy tendencies, and anything too loose, we're way too vulnerable to other people's unhealthy tendencies. So we've got to have the balance of a well formed, healthy cell wall that also has, as part of being healthy, has the ability to exchange ions and excrete waste and bring in oxygen and nutrients and do all these things are okay, let's do a castle wall. If you have a castle wall and no gate, no drawbridge, how are you going to keep supplies coming and going from the castle? How are you going to allow people to go out and defend the walls? How are you going to get people to go out and explore new territories? How are you going to bring in food and weaponry and visiting diplomats? How do we do this if we don't have a working drawbridge? It's not just the boundaries, it's the pathways through them and how we manage that. And I'm talking about boundaries because we have to decide where we draw a line around a thing. We have to be able to say, this is mine, and this is the space that needs to operate within. And around that space, I draw my line. That's my cell wall. That's where everything happens. And in the world, that's the interface with the world. And then this is what holds and protects and provides for that thing I value. And if we act to keep that cell healthy, you can believe that that's a true value. But if we say, I value this, and then we're doing everything to destroy the wall, or we're just letting people climb over it, or, you know, eh, that doesn't show we really value it. So that's a clue. Go back and reevaluate those things. And I've been doing a lot of that the last few years. And it's interesting to find that there was a wisdom in the choice I've made in the past, but it just doesn't apply in the present tense. And sometimes it was an outright poorly informed, poorly made choice, some dumbassery. Um, but I was working with what I had available to me at the time. And now that I have other resources, I can apply them, modify, update, and get better results. So it's I think we avoid it because we don't want to admit we're wrong. Being wrong is such an opportunity to do it better. It's feedback. It's a gift. It's a teacher. Failure is a teacher. It's a guide. And so when I look back and I see the dumb things I thought or did, I'm like, this is where integration comes in. I take those parts of me and I don't just like, fine, forgive them. I look at them and I go, hey, you did a pretty good job with what you had. Thank you for doing the best you could at that point with those resources, with those options. And I understand how this approach was beneficial in those under those conditions, but now in different circumstances, we need a different approach to get the same basic result. The result would be I have what's needed for me and my people. I have um, a sort of peace and clarity in my life. I have a sense of basic safety and right anything at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid. Like I was always struggling just to get there, and that was good, and it was good enough for the time given what I was dealing with, but it's not good enough for flourishing and developing into a more comprehensive and I don't want to keep saying integrated, but yeah, well integrated self. And it, it doesn't apply here. It's not enough to just survive. What was a priority at the base of the pyramid remains a necessity, but it should be better provided for, that it's not the foremost objective. At the point that you can establish security with those things, it's time to move on to where the primary objective is more about what is it? Let's see if I remember. It's about having a sense of place and purpose, connection, esteem, all these things where we go out in the world and we connect with others and we do and we create and we experience. That's the next tier. And what gets you through survival isn't necessarily going to provide for what gets you through fulfillment. And so in seeking fulfillment at a higher level, or at least a different level, um, I need to update all of my thinking. And this is something I really got from Richard Grannon's work. It really was amazing to look at it and go, yeah, I've got a lot of junk in here. And I've now spent about 7 years cleaning it out. It was a very messy closet. It took this long to get this far, and there's still more to be done. So it's it's sort of a life's work. It's an ongoing process, and I enjoy the process because I see it as going into a classroom and learning. Like, okay, I did it this way, what happened? I'm a little mad scientist over here, like experimenting with my choices. But I'm starting to recognize that there is a basic um there's like a grid, and where the lines intersect, we make very pivotal and influential decisions about the values, and then the other decisions we make usually stem from that. And if they don't, they reflect back to it the need to check in again. Did I get it right? Was it right then, but not now? Is it mostly right, except this thing I need to change? Go and take a look at all of this stuff, and through that, be able to continually revamp the system and the approaches to respond to what is really happening in life in real time, and to it makes dealing with reality a lot easier because reality has the answers, and we're very curious monkeys. We want to go where the answers are. So, pardon. Mm. So when I think of it as a place to go get answers, it's not as uncomfortable. In fact, it's kind of exciting. I'm like, okay, what am I doing now? What is this thing? Hello, what have we got? And again, embrace it and include it and be like, all right, you figured this out when that was the situation. I need you to come and look at this situation and help me figure this out. Whatever processes were in play, that that pattern needs to be applied to now with the knowledge from now of how to um, take the best and leave the rest, right? And to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to say, there was a lot of good about the way I did a thing. This is where it was problematic. So I guess it's about isolating, echolocating, pinging off of things until we get the picture. And this is just another insight into how I could do that, to say where were the core choices. And for me, in the example given before, I chose the high score. I did. I was like, I'm gonna stand by what I value. I have a belief that the game is best played this way, and we all play a game. Alan Watts talks about this. My game is best played this way, and that is to be consistent with my values, to act them out even, right? It's what's the quote? If you don't live by your values when they're challenged, they're not values, they're hobbies. It's something like this. And I feel this way. I'm like, I don't want to be a hobbyist. I want to do this. I want to go all in. And in standing by those values when things get tough, there's a richness to my life, to my experience of it, and to it's about putting that one more layer of paint on building our character and our sense of self. And I can say factually, doesn't matter what my perception of myself may be, what my emotional state might be, what my circumstances are, I can say objectively, most of the time, when something was on the line that I valued and standing by it was going to cost me, I chose to assume that cost. Is that the better or the worse way to navigate? I don't know. I know we do celebrate heroes, and heroes are people who do that. And I want to be able to celebrate myself in that way. I want to, when I'm alone with my thoughts, I want to be able to be like, yeah, but most of the time, you stuck to your guns, right? And I understand who I am through that. I can say what I value or believe, but it's through seeing how I've acted it out that I know my actual mettle at that level. And so there's something in this that allows me to unravel who I am to the extent that it's almost objective fact, right? And it doesn't require I feel or see things a certain way. I look at it and it says, this many times you had you had something on the line that you valued and you stayed with it because you felt the pain was worth it to preserve this higher value in your system. Other people seem to be a lot more sane and have suffered probably much less. No, I don't know if that's true. There's a different kind of suffering comes from avoiding pain. So I don't know if they've suffered less, but perhaps their suffering didn't manifest as mine did. And I think that's also part of why I choose to come down on this side of it for myself, is that if I try to avoid or defer pain, I find it accrues interest and comes back with a vengeance in that way or some other way at some point. You can't really buy out of your share of pain. And it's almost like we were given at like the beginning of the video game of life, you have like X points of this and so many of these in your reserve, and right? And we're given a certain amount of pain we're going to experience, and there's no getting around it. Can we lessen it? Can we reduce suffering? Can we do other things? Yeah, but there's going to be pain, and in avoiding it, we're just deferring it to this huge charge of fucking awfulness instead of just letting it be like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Don't, I'm gonna go cry or vomit or just do the thing. Just have the awful feeling and suffer the consequences and adapt to the losses or the new burdens or whatever it might be and be busy doing that instead of sitting there frozen like a prey animal, like trying not to trying not to get eaten. That's not living. That's the thing to me. It's not living. And it's exhausting to operate on that basis. I've had to go there in times in my life and it's awful. I hate it. I would rather the pain of the pain than the pain of avoiding the pain. And so I don't know. I obviously am biased because I chose the side I chose. But I also understand the virtues of saying I can't right now handle this pain. I need time, I need space. That's actually reasonable. even if you're willing to take on pain, sometimes you still need to defer it. But that should be conscious and strategic, not reflexive and defensive, right? Like, no, it's different from, give me a minute. Same basic outcome on paper, but a different thing in spirit. So there's that. Pardon. Um, yeah, fumbling through these thoughts half awake. There is a wisdom and there is a reason to avoid and defer pain. I don't like pain. I don't have the masochism to go seeking it or inviting it in consciously. I'm working very hard to find the ways in which I can make sure it doesn't creep in or seep in or do whatever slithery thing it wants to do in my life. Because I I think I've had it plenty. I'm full up. I already got one. So yeah, I um I don't like the pain. I, I'm, I'm like dissociating thinking about it. But the pain, there will be pain. Here's my premise. There will be pain. You can go directly into it, experience it as what it is right now, pay cash, get your receipt and be out. Or you can like avoid the pain, but now you've got fees and interest and the sense of a debt hanging over you that when you get something, it's not entirely yours, right? Now you're still on the hook for dealing with these people or the situation. You can't just like cash and carry. Like it's you got to be there and still engaged with it. And that's another resource, our engagement. Time, attention, right? That's our engagement. And that's finite. And when we have to like check and like see where our credit card bill is and call the company and make payments and move funds and that's part of our life force we're spending. That's what it costs. And so to me, if it's like, look, I'll just pay the pain now instead of having this whole complex credit system that like is also in this case much more arbitrary. There aren't terms and conditions that like you get to understand when you're avoiding pain that there are no rules. It's all bets are off. It's just a free for all. And so it's much more taxing. I think it's a lot more painful to avoid. It's like you're almost doing it the hard way. I used to say I'm an overachiever in a lazy person's clothing, because I would basically like I would act like I was lazy, but at the end of the day, I would end up putting in a lot of work. And I'm like, what do you do? And I think it's almost like people who say they can't handle pain probably can handle pain better than anyone else because they create so much of it for themselves, right? You know, they're acting out the fact that they can handle pain. It's that they can handle this kind of pain, this familiar pain, not the pain of going out beyond the familiar, beyond the comfort zone and into the unknown. It's not it's not about the pain, maybe it's about the unknown and the fear and the limitation we feel around that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to understand people pleasing a little bit better, see where I have these tendencies, see where I attract and entertain these behaviors with others, see how it works in general. And this is another thought about that is like, it's maybe not that they're avoiding the pain, it's like they're avoiding the unknown. All right, that's something to give more thought to, but I have enough tabs open here, so let me try to stitch it together. I'm basically realizing that there are critical points at which we can make decisions that will then impact future decisions. And if they do not, we need to go back and reevaluate it because what we act out shows what we really believe, what we really value. And if our actions don't align with our stated beliefs, then we need to go back and dig deeper to find the core beliefs that are going to be consistent with future action. When we go to act something out, does it align with what we say is true? Because that's sanity. It's taking reality and putting all the pieces together till there's a cohesive and functional whole. And it's not on and off. It's it's you rebuild the whole a little bit at a time, and the more complete it is, the more functional it is. But it's always moving in that direction. And if we're not moving in that direction, go back and look at what the beliefs and the values are and how much we are aligned with that, how much that is what we want to be doing. What is it we are doing? What does that show we need? Even if it's something we don't want, it's still something that a part of us is using to fulfill a need that's not being met otherwise. So if we could get to the root need and say, what don't you have here? What is it we need to provide for that will turn off the alarm and allow for satisfaction to like quiet this? Like you're content now, you have the thing. And so when we're not doing what we say we want to do, we should assume we're doing what we really want to do and understand that and try to meet the needs more effectively, more consciously. And so, all right, I don't know if I can stitch this together. I've been all the way around it a few times, like off in 12 directions, but choices, beliefs, values, experience, putting these together and testing within the system for what is and isn't true will almost generate this emergent map of our actual reality that if we follow that, we might stop bumping into things and falling off of cliff edges and actually get where we want to be. So that's my thought on that. My many thoughts on many things, really. Good morning. This is how my brain wakes up. Ta-da! All right. So I'm not sure I have any conclusion to offer or summary, but it's a good it's a good trip around some stuff that's surfacing for me. It's just kind of percolating up at this point, and I'm trying to grab a hold of it. So there's some notes and some thoughts, and I think there were some actual takeaways. Anyway, it's 32 minutes. If I haven't said it, it's probably not worth saying right now. Okay, well, we'll save some for the next round. Bye bye.